Men can't do what women can do, and women can't do what men can do. For generations, that belief has shaped strict rules around the roles each gender should play in relationships. Masculinity has long been tied to how much a man can provide or protect, and when he doesn't or can't, he's often seen as not man enough. But times are changing slowly and men are beginning to speak up. Still, the work of redefining what it means to be a man, especially in love and family life, is far from over. In this episode, I sit with Crystal DeSantis, a licensed marriage and family therapist who's passionate about men's mental health, emotional expression, and healing. Together, we unpack the unspoken expectations placed on men and explore how both men and women can build healthier, more emotionally honest relationships. So, if you're a man or you love one, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
I did some research into what men think it means for them to be a man. A man is only as useful as what he can provide. And this is what a lot of men have been taught for a long, long time, right? Is that this is what makes you valuable. This is what women want from you. This is what makes you a high value man.
What are the signs that a man is struggling silently in his relationship?
Anything like over drinking, playing too many video games, disassociating, not taking care of himself. When people don't feel like they have an impact, their self-esteem goes down, their sense of purpose goes down. It makes sense that if a man comes home and he's like, hey, I did something, and he gets positive feedback, that's just being human.
Have you ever had a situation where a man came up straight to you and just said, Crystal, I feel like I'm not man enough? Hi guys, so before we get into the episode, I have a little huge favor to ask of you. Over the years, I've learned that closed mouths don't get fed. So this is me opening my mouth with the hopes that you'll feed me to stupor. If you as little as enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe. It gives me the extra motivation that I need to keep going because I really want to be doing this for a very, very long time. Okay, thank you. Let's get back to the show. Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah.
Good. So I like to start by asking my guests, why do you do what you do?
Well, I am somebody who loves men. And I'm just really passionate about helping people have healthier relationships. I see that so much pain comes from people having heartbreak, people wanting love, not knowing how to get it or how to keep it. And so this is something that I'm really passionate about. I want people to have healthy love and happy relationships. I think it makes for happier people and a healthier world.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense. So in your experience, what do you think is the reason why a lot of men don't feel like they are men enough if they are not able to provide for their families?
Well, that has been a script that men have been given. And, that's been going on for a long time, right? The idea that a man is only as useful as what he can provide to his family, right? And this is something that, when I was writing my book, I did some research into, what men think it means for them to be a man. And it really came down to, being a protector, being a provider, and being able to procreate, being able to give your wife babies, right? It's like, this is, you can protect her, you can provide for her, and you can give her babies. And this is what a lot of men have been taught for a long, long time, right? Is that this is what makes you valuable. This is what women want from you. This is what makes you a high value man in the marketplace, right? In this dating marketplace is, if you're rich, if you're strong, and if you, are virile, you're the one that they want, right? All the moms are going to try to lock you down, and for their daughters, and it's changed really quickly, and I think this is where a lot of men are confused, right? And also, it's not that easy to just be a provider, be a protector, and a lot of women don't just want a procreator; they want somebody who's going to be an equal parent. And so this is something that I've seen with a lot of men is they're confused. What do women want? What is our value? Um, and it's really an evolving conversation. Yeah.
But is it not the truth though that that women want men who can provide? Because I saw a study a while back that was talking about how women are making more money, but even wealthy women don't want to marry men who cannot provide. So I feel like the fear of these men are valid because a lot of women actually do want men who can provide. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. It is a double bite, right? It's like, but, and I think this is what the issue is that we're in this kind of state of flux, right? Because there are some women that are earning, but they still want their man to earn more, right? There are some women that say, I have a job, but I want my man to be the one to pay all the bills and all my money goes to me, right? And there are some women that are like, I don't want a job at all. I want a soft life, right? I want a man to pay all the bills and be the provider, and I don't want to do anything.
mhm.
But then there are other women who say, life is long. People have jobs, people lose jobs. The job market is unstable. There's no guarantee that you have the same job and you're going to be able to keep it consistently, right? I mean, so what? You marry a man who is a lawyer, but then, halfway through, let's say he gets laid off. What are you going to do? You're going to leave him, right? And so some of the conversations around that is like, I think there's a lot of mixed messages, and I think this is where a lot of men are confused. They're like, wait, so some women are like, yes, we want a man to provide, but then there are other women that are saying, well, I mean, I have my own money and I want a partner, right? I don't want the traditional setup. I want something different. uh, and I think there's a lot there's a lot. Everybody's different and people want different things, but things are evolving.
Mm. So what should a confused man do in situations like this?
Is focus on what you want.
The man,
The man.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
the man. Because I feel like a lot of the confusion is men trying to understand what women want from them. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to be? How do you want me to be? Right? This whole happy wife, happy life. You want me to be rich. You want me to be tall. You want me to be, present, but not too present. You want me to give you everything you want, but also be able to say no. Like, what do I do? And so a lot of this is like the work I do with men is like, well, let's slow down and let's focus on, as a man, what do you want to stand for? What are your values? What do you see as your value? Right? And how do you want to show up in the world? How do you want to cultivate your own sense of masculinity, your own sense of mastery? Uh, and then find a woman who respects that, who honors that, who sees you for who you are, not just who she wants you to be or who she needs you to be. Right? Because that often sets people up for, transactional relationships in which nobody really feels seen. People then get resentful. They're like, I do so much in the work in this relationship, and I don't feel like I'm appreciated in the way that I want to be. So really, we got to just, my message to the men that are confused is slow down, start with you. Figure out what it is that's important to you, what you want, and then look for a woman who could see that.
That makes a lot of sense. You've worked with quite a number of couples, and so I wanted to ask, in your work with couples, how do you see traditional gender roles causing tension or disconnection in relationships today? Is that even a fact to start with?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think so. The way it causes friction is the world has changed, right? So I honestly don't see a lot of people who, huh. So the world has changed, right? So back in the day, and again, every couple is different. So I don't want to lump every, but I talk about there's the difference between, Dr. Walter Farrell calls it role mates and soulmates. So back in the day, role mates were really important, right? Women needed men to be able to own property. Men, they needed a husband, they needed somebody to provide, and men needed women to take care of the house, cook, have their babies, raise their babies. Like, you kind of picked somebody who had the opposite skills from you, right? Or at least in the way that people were socialized. And now what I see is that, it doesn't really matter which parent stays home, which parent's the breadwinner. At the end of the day, what I see more of is the modern couple wants to feel connected. They want to know that they are not replaceable if they get sick and they can't, or they lose their job, or they can't have children. That their partner's not going to be like, well, I married you for your kid bearing abilities, so you're out. Or, oh, I married you because I thought you could, but you can't, so you're out. Or I married you because you were a lawyer and I wanted a rich life and you can't, so you're out. Right? Instead, really going to this like, we choose each other as people to go on a life journey with and to create a beautiful love story with. Um, and that's what we're looking for is people who could do that. And, if that means that one person is better at, their this skill or that skill, it doesn't really matter. It's people are more flexible, people are more adaptable, they work together better as a team. Whereas people that are kind of fixated on fixed gender roles, when one person can't do the thing, that's where you start to see people get frustrated and things fall apart. And people start getting resentful about feeling like they're obligated to do something when maybe it's not their strength or they don't really want to.
So, there are some researchers that are of the school of thought that nature naturally designed men to be like the provider and the protector. And then they cite examples from the primitive years and they use animals as examples of how the men used to provide and how the man is supposed to provide. I feel like it's very difficult for these men because there's like facts and facts everywhere saying that this is why you are here. Nature designed you to be like this. Do you have anything to say to
I
play
think,
with those?
and that's where, the science doesn't really back that up. It really doesn't, because like if you're living in subsistence, everybody's got a job. It's not like the women are staying at home saying, oh, husband, bring me, this. It everybody was out working, the kids were out working, everybody was trying to survive, everybody was pulling together, you had to. So, sure, maybe the men being more physically strong, they were able to go and like hunt, but the women were hunting too. Women were hunting small game, women were gathering. And if anything, if we talk about, the studies of like what's the calorie breakdown, is more calories actually came from the gathering than the hunting, right? So the hunting is like big, impressive. Sure, oh yeah, you brought home an elephant. But on a daily basis, again, it's like the small things, the everyday of the gathering, the small, like ongoing work. Everybody was working together. This idea that only men were providing is just not true. Okay. Um, and same thing with protection, right? It's like everybody was working together. If you look back on, tribes, everybody worked together to make sure that everybody survived. There was nobody that was just, along for the ride, right? So I think that's a piece of it. When people talk about like, oh, well, men being the sole financial providers, again, let's look at that from like what level of society. Right? You said, talk about, there's always been working women. Women have always had jobs, right? There's been women that have worked through all history. So this image of like, oh, these just women that only stayed home and raised their children and went out for manicures. This is a very curated image that doesn't necessarily bear up to the reality of what most women were doing for most of history.
Hmm. Have you ever had a situation where a man came up straight to you and just said, Crystal, I feel like I'm not man enough?
Mm-hmm.
Have you?
Yeah, there's been men
And the-
that struggle with that. Yeah.
yeah, and then to men like this, what advice do you usually give them as the first step to find value in themselves?
It's whose ruler are you measuring yourself by? Right? Not man enough according to. Right? And so that's often where it's like the internal, like, are you measuring yourself against some society's yardstick? Are you measuring yourself against the messages that were told to you uh, from childhood? Right? What does it mean to be man enough? Right? And so that's really a lot of that work that needs to be done is, everybody wants to feel like they're enough. Everybody wants to feel good enough. Um, it doesn't feel good to feel like you're failing in some way, but sometimes it's you're measuring yourself against somebody else's stick, and it's not yours, right? And so, really kind of helping any man or any person that feels that way discover, like, well, what is your version of success? I sure, maybe you're getting criticized because your family is saying like, oh, you don't have, you know, this amount of money coming in. It's like, but do you feel fulfilled in your life that you get to, I don't know, be a present father? You get to, hang your wife and you have great times together. Maybe that is actual success, right? And so there's a difference between achievement and fulfillment. And so that's often a conversation. Is like sometimes men, they get this message of like achievement culture, like hustle. You got to be, hustling. You got to be achieving. Like, what's your next goal? And it's like, men are people too. Sometimes they just want to feel safe and comfortable in a life that they enjoy. And that's enough. But not when the society tells you, no, it's not. That's not being a man. Right. And so that's sometimes where the work is how can you listen to what feels true for you and what feels fulfilling in your own life and in your own family, and not try to measure yourself by somebody else's stick.
Yeah, in your line of study or research, have you come across any biological facts? I'm trying to word it very carefully now. Any biological facts that programs the man's brain in a way where it says you have to provide, you have to provide. You know, it boosts his egos every time he can provide. He feels good every time he can provide. His masculine aura is on top of the world. Are there any researches that are backing this idea, this belief?
And that's a difficult one because it's the nature versus nurture argument, right? Because I mean, what the research shows is that people want to know they make an impact, right? So this comes out of the world of corporate, right? Where they're talking about the science of motivation. How do we keep people motivated? Is when people don't feel like they have an impact, their self-esteem goes down, their will to live goes down, their sense of purpose goes down, right? So yeah, it makes sense that if a man comes home and he's like, hey, I did something, and he gets positive feedback, I mean, that's just being human. Every human likes that. And they want to see a positive impact in the world, right? We want to know that we matter. Uh, as far as are there brain studies about like this is a masculine dopamine hit? Not so much. The science is not so much there, but there is definitely a sociological aspect of that, right? Is that like what kind of then social credit do you get as a man? What kind of, props do you get from your bros or your society about like, oh yes, you get validated about being a man? Yeah, that's a whole different thing. But yes, so the nature piece, the science piece about like humans need to know they have an impact. That is an essential part of self-esteem. It is an essential part of self-efficacy, self-mastery, is knowing that you do something and it matters, right? When people are unseen, where people feel like their voice doesn't matter, where they feel like their efforts don't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, man or woman. Like your self-esteem goes down, your mental health goes down, you suffer. Uh, so, there's maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, you love and care about men so much. You wrote a whole book about men's mental health. Let's talk about the book real quick.
Sure.
Why should, what's the title?
Strong, a,
Strong.
a
Yeah.
relationship field guide for the modern man.
Okay. Um, why should a random person who's watching this or listening to this podcast buy Strong?
So, what I wanted to do with Writing Strong is, I'm a marriage therapist. And one of the things I found is that, sometimes when a couple would come to therapy, the woman would have maybe more resources, more experience. Maybe she's already gone to therapy individually. Uh, and the men were coming in kind of feeling already like they were one down, you know? And again, like thinking about, well, how do you make a man feel empowered and feel like there's skills and tools here and not just, okay, you're going to come to therapy and something is going to happen and then, you know, I don't know. It's really kind of speaking to men about laying it out of like, here's the skills and tools, here is the blueprint, here's an understanding of like, what it means maybe to be a protector and a provider in the modern world, right? So like, for example, maybe your wife doesn't need you to financially provide, or she doesn't need you to like be physically big and, so that you could punch out the guy that, I don't know, at the gym or something, but maybe she needs you to provide an emotionally safe space. Maybe she needs you to protect your relationship by, knowing what your vices are, right? And like all of those things, those are the threats to the modern relationship. It's not, I don't know, lions, tigers, and pirates, right? And so that's really what I talk about in the book is like, yeah, be your masculine, be a protector, be a provider. But what does that mean in a modern world, in a modern relationship? Is protection more than just physical strength? Maybe it's emotional strength. Is provision more than simply a paycheck? Maybe you're providing play. Maybe you're providing support. Maybe you're providing encouragement. Maybe you're providing something completely, you know, different than simply a paycheck. And so it's really about how can you just evolve into a new version of what it means to be a protector and provider in the modern era, right? Um, it doesn't mean like don't be a protector and a provider if you don't want, if you want to. It's like great, be in your masculine. Women, there are lots of women that want a really masculine man, but protection and provision can look like a couple of different things. It doesn't have to be a fist and a wallet. Okay.
So you're saying now that there are women who are attracted to men who don't necessarily provide money or shelter or those things in those category.
Um, if a woman has all of that, then what else are you going to bring to the table? And so this is part of the conversation that's happening right now, right? So if a woman can feed herself, if she has her own home, she has her own job, she doesn't need a man to provide for her in those ways. What else can you provide? Right? That's where can you provide emotional support? Can you provide kindness? I mean, that's something else. Is like one of the most recent research studies that came out was what are people looking? What is one of the top characteristics that people look for in a partner is kindness. You know,
I know for sure I would pick kindness over it.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so this is again where it's like, like looking to attract a modern woman. And this is where I think a lot of men, they're getting frustrated. They're like, well, these modern women, they don't need us. They can pay their own bills. I think, yeah, but that's not a bad thing if you have something else to bring to the table, right? Um, and so, this is also a book of like empowering men to say like, hey, you're not obsolete, right? It's not like, okay, this is a woman's world now and we don't need men. It's like, of course, everybody, like, we need to work together. Healthy relationships, especially in the future with families, like, it's going to take two healthy people. And so let's redefine what it means to be an attractive partner as more than just, oh, he's got a lot of money. It's like also you deserve to be more humanized and not objectified in that way, right? Women fought for that. Women fought to not just be seen as like, oh, can you clean? Can you cook? Can you have a baby? It's like, women want to be seen as full humans. And so I think the same is true for men, right? You're more than just a paycheck. You're more than just, your physical appearance. I mean, again, there's unhealthy people out there that are just looking for, you know, transaction, but there's also people out there that are looking for something real.
Yeah. Every time conversations like this pop up, I'm always very excited, especially since I'm a boy mom because I have a boy child that I'm raising, and I feel like there are a lot of resources around, how to support a woman, how to be there for the girl child. And I understand that it's all part of women taking power and it's a great initiative. But I feel like for the side of the men, we've gone a little bit extreme to the other side, wherein it's like we're now victimizing men, and then just putting them through so much. And there are really bad men out there, but there are also really great men, And this the great ones should be awarded grace, and kindness that we want from them. But I wanted to ask, do you think that women sometimes, maybe unknowingly, reinforce harmful masculine expectations in their partners?
Absolutely. And that's part of the problem, right? Is that women were raised in the same, um, under the same expectations. So sometimes women, again, even without maybe doing it deliberately, sometimes unconsciously or subconsciously reinforce the models of like, we need men to be a certain way. Um, and again, I don't think women are doing themselves any favors when they do that to men either, right? And like you said, I really do think that we need to send a more positive message, especially young boys, right? Is like, hey, you're valuable. It's not just, hey, girls rule, boys drool, right? Like, come on now. Let's all grow up and move past that and start looking at how we can have a world in which women feel empowered, but so do men. And nobody is taking power from anybody else. Instead, we're empowered to be our best selves and to have the relationships we want and to also find and honor our authentic value, right? And then also give everybody the freedom to be the type of men and women that they want to be. Right? And not try to put people in boxes or shove people into roles, because that's really what I see as doing a disservice to the humanity of both men and women. Right? Is when we try to reduce them to, well, but you're a woman, you should do blank, or well, but you're a man, you should do blank. It's like, can we all just honor each other's humanity and say, like, you know, maybe there's room for everyone?
Yeah, so do you think that maybe sometimes roles have the benefits that they play, or it's just outright bad?
I
Don't look
think
look.
it's outright bad. I think there are a lot of relationships that operate that way. But what I've found is that when the relationships operate in that way, uh, there's expectations to uphold. And sometimes it comes with expiry dates. So I talk about like function-based relationships versus connection-based relationships. Connection-based relationships, the core is always how do we stay connected even if our roles change. Right? So let's say one parent is the working parent, one parent is stay-at-home parent, but at the end of the day, we focus on how do we stay connected. And then maybe our kids grow up and we both go back to work and how do we stay connected? And then maybe one of us retires and the other one, like at the end of the day, our focus is how do we stay connected through all the seasons of life. No matter what roles we end up in, the connection is the thing that we protect. Whereas with roles, it can be a little fragile because there isn't that connection to hold it up. So if somebody stops performing their role, sometimes that's where the relationship ends. Or that's where frustration comes in. If they're like, well, we're not going to get divorced, but now I'm just going to steeze with resentment that my husband lost his job and now I have to get a job and now I'm very angry about it because I thought he was the provider, right? Or, whatever the thing is. Like my wife got sick and now I have to come home and take care of the kids and now I'm angry because that was her job and that's what I thought we agreed on, right? And so that's where it's not necessarily a bad thing. There are couples that make it work. There are people that stay in role-based relationships for a long time, but if something changes, that's where it gets a little sticky. And that's where sometimes the fragility of that kind of setup is really evident, right? I mean, yeah, you never know with life. Somebody gets sick, somebody loses a job, like
And I feel like there are a lot of couples that have these roles, even though the roles are killing them, but they don't know how to come out of it, right? So, what would you say now is the first step to begin to rewrite the rules around roles in relationship without feeling like you're losing something essential?
yeah. And at the end of the day, that's where it just goes back to can you turn a relationship from based on roles and connections to really being a soulmate connection based relationship? I mean, that's the work. I believe, like, you know, at the end of the day, connection is there when you find it, when you nurture it, right? It's like if you go, I don't know, on a train and you're like, okay, there's all these collection of individuals. How do we turn it into connection? We got to start talking. We got to start reaching out. And then, maybe by the end of the ride, we're like, hey, we're having a train party, right? But it doesn't just happen because you're in the same place together. And that's unfortunately where I see too many couples that are like, well, we live together. We've been married for 20 years. It's like, yes, but there's no connection. Connection is something that has to be cultivated. It has to be nurtured. It has to be maintained. It has to be, it's like that spark, right? You got to keep the spark alive. You got to start the spark somewhere. So, if you're a couple and you're in a function-based relationship and maybe you had a spark but it died, you got, disconnected along the way, is don't give them hope. Do some deeper work, get back to that place of connection, because that's the thing that's going to keep you for the rest of your lives, no matter what roles you end up having with each other.
I feel like it's easy for me as a woman to be vulnerable because the society awards me that vulnerability is paired side by side with being feminine, right? But it's very difficult for men to speak up or to openly talk about like an emotional pain or vulnerability, even when they're in a safe relationship, right? So if a man is ready now to speak up, but he's maybe too scared to turn to his partner because he doesn't want to be perceived as a certain way, which is hardly ever the case in my opinion, anyways. But what tips would you give this man to just owning or being his true authentic self and just being vulnerable with his partner?
Yeah. And this is where I like what Brene Brown says about vulnerability, is that it's bravery. It's courage, right? And what's more masculine than bravery and courage, right? Having the bravery to have the hard conversation and the courage to tell your wife, "Hey, I'm lonely," or "I miss you," or "I miss us," right? Let's do something different, right? And that's also a very masculine quality that I think a lot of women are waiting for, right? I
Yes.
want a man to take the lead in an emotional conversation. I want a man to tell me, like, "I miss you. Let's get there. Let's go deeper." Um, and I think that's where, yes, you're right. Society hasn't always validated men for doing that, but that's where that bravery comes in. It's like taking that brave step to be vulnerable, to be courageous, to put yourself out there, to say, "Hey, wife, let's go into this next chapter together," right? And like, gosh, life is short. Like, don't you want to have the best marriage you can have? Don't you want to have better sex? Don't you want to have a deeper relationship with your kids, and just have more ease and peace? And I feel like a lot of people want that, and it's like, well, the bravery is being vulnerable enough to do the work so you can have that, right?
Well, I know for sure every time I've had, or my partner and I have had like those difficult conversations after an argument, it has made us, I feel like, better because now we've said the hard stuff. And I feel like the more hard stuff you say, the more comfortable you are with saying hard stuff because you've said hard stuff in the past, and, and nothing happened. But in my head, I also feel like a lot of men are just scared that because um, I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, but there's biology wherein it's like men are biologically stronger than women. Men can naturally lift heavier stuff than women. We cannot take away those facts and those truths, right? But I feel like a lot of men are scared that when you then become vulnerable, you cannot then go back and act like, oh, you're tough. So you think strength and sensitivity can coexist?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One definitely does not negate the other. And if anything, I mean, that's why I call my book Strong, is like getting physically strong is one aspect of strength. Getting emotionally strong is that other aspect that enhances, right? It's like, and as a woman, again, going back to what do women need from men is to feel safe, right? And so if a man is a physically strong man, but he's emotionally unsafe, that's not a guy we want, right? So if a man is physically strong and he's emotionally safe, that's a guy that is attractive, right? And so I think just telling, like sending the word to men is like, hey, physical strength is one aspect, but emotional strength is what makes you actually really attractive. Like two things together. I mean,
Yeah.
goes
A lot of times I feel like sometimes I feel like women don't also know that men are struggling,
absolutely.
right? So it sometimes helps if you can look at your partner and then make the conversation easy for him. So what signs, like what are the signs that a man is struggling silently in his relationship so that maybe women can look out for these skills and go, oh, I see that you're struggling with this. Do you want to talk about it?
And I do, that's a huge piece of it, right? Is that often women also want men to engage with them in the way that they would engage. And so I think being open to the fact that he might express himself slightly differently. Are you open to hearing the way he expresses himself? Uh, are you a safe person for him to be himself with, or do you want him to be the way that you think he should be, right? Which then would make you not a safe person for him to be vulnerable with, right? So some signs, and again, just like, you know, is he uh, shutting off? Is he, disconnecting? Anything like over drinking? Anything like kind of uh, disassociative behaviors, playing too many video games, disassociating, not taking care of himself. When's the last time he went to the gym and like really took care of his health? When's the last time he took Tom to his friends? Like, when's the last time he did something that he enjoyed with your support, with your encouragement? So starting kind of with that stuff of like I've heard from some men where they're like, I can't, take a moment for myself because my wife makes me feel bad. She's like, oh, you're so selfish. You're taking it, going to the gym. Why can't I have that? It's like, well, hold on. Maybe we can all have that. We just need to sit down and say, do we care about each other's needs and how can I support you? Right. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's something to look out for. Is like, I mean, I have a little exercise that I put in my book that I ask couples to check in. And this is maybe something that if a wife is like, I don't know what's going on with my husband, is like, ask him these 3 questions. What's something that made you proud in the last week? What are you proud of? And see if he can bring anything up. I've had women ask their husbands that, and their husbands are like, I don't feel proud of anything. I feel helpless. I feel hopeless. I feel like, again, I'm not making any positive impact. And so that would be a good sign of like, oh gosh, again, feeling proud of yourself is a good marker of self esteem, right? So check in about a point of pride. The next one is check in about a point of pain. Hey, has anything been bothering you in this last week? Is anything painful happening? And again, you might find out like, okay, maybe he's struggling at work, or maybe he's got some physical stuff that he needs to deal with that he doesn't feel like he has room to express. Right? Check in about that. Provide care. And then the last thing is pleasure. Ask him about what something pleasurable that he experienced. All right. And again, it's like when people are disconnected, when people are depressed, they can't find pleasure. Right? It's like nothing is pleasurable. I wake up, I go to work, I come home. I wake up, I go to work, I come home. It's like, okay, well, that might also be a sign, right? So if there's an absence of pride, too much pain, and not enough pleasure, like these are warning signs. I'm like, okay, maybe we need to either go talk to a counselor, get some outside help, or we need to do something different so that he feels like, okay, he's proud of himself, the pain is being addressed, and then we're finding moments of pleasure that we can share together. And that's kickstarts that connection. So ask your man these 3 questions, and this is what I call the heartbeat exercise. So ask him about a point of pride, ask him what he was proud of this week, ask him about a point of pain, anything painful that's happened to him, and ask him about a point of pleasure, anything that was pleasurable that he experienced. And if he can't come up with anything, that's a cue for the two of you to share something together.
Okay. So I feel like a lot of conditioning that has been happening with men and the society is from like generations before, like way generations. But then the new, if you want to effect any change, then it starts from this current generation, right? So if we want to raise, as somebody especially who's raising a son now, if we want to raise the next generation of emotionally intelligent men,
Yes.
where do we start as parents?
So if we want to raise the next generation of healthy boys and healthy partners, is we got to start with the foundations of safety. So in my book, S is the beginning of strong. It's the beginning of a healthy relationship. Safety, the skills of safety are self-awareness, right? Knowing who you are, knowing what you need. Stability. Do you have basic life skills? There are so many men who are adults who don't have basic like life skills, right? And that causes a lot of friction in romantic partners now. So, teach your boys how to clean, teach your boys how to cook, teach your boys how to take care of themselves. And then self-regulation and self-expression. Teach them how to manage themselves when they're activated, when they're upset, when they're angry, and then teach them how to express themselves, teach them the language of emotions, teach them how to have emotionally intelligent conversations. And then this makes for a safe and healthy partner.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. You are doing amazing work. To round it up, I wanted to ask, are there any, when couples come to you for help, what usually is the major cause of the problem?
people often say the communication and conflict, right? I don't feel like we're communicating. They're not understanding me. Our conflict spirals out of control. And fundamentally, what it is I feel is people are not connecting in the way they want to. Right, the connection is missing. The connection isn't there, and that's a very painful thing for people. Is to be, it's kind of like that saying. It's like the loneliest feeling in the world isn't being alone; it's being with someone and not feeling connected.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I felt that. That is so deep. But yeah, thank you so much. I've had the most insightful conversation in just this like 48 minutes that we've spoken. I advise everybody to get strong. I haven't gotten a chance to finish it. But I definitely will go through and then look through it, because everybody who's raising a son or who loves a man or a man himself should definitely go and get strong. And if somebody wanted to book your services, Crystal, how do you reach you?
I am on I'm on Instagram at ATX Therapist, or my website is just strong.love.
Okay, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Crystal. You do amazing work. Please don't stop. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Yes. Bye.
Bye.